President Cyril Ramaphosa just addressed the nation on the country's foreign policy and the upcoming BRICS Summit. There's a lot at stake, and as the summit happens, BRICS nations are seeking to blunt Western dominance. Ramaphosa says South Africa even supports the expansion of BRICS membership. Let's bring in international relations expert Siphamandla Zondi. Good evening to you, Mr. Zondi. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsnight. We heard from the President a short while ago, and he opened his address by touching on foreign policy, and he also spoke on the significance of this BRICS gathering on both South Africa as a country, but also Africa as a whole. Let's just get your initial reaction.
Yes, good evening and good evening to the viewers. It is important for the President to underline the importance of this huge gathering taking place in our country, a gathering representing over 50% of global GDP, global economy, more than 50% as well of the global population, very big and major countries, and very big issues that are being discussed and that is being done on our soil. So it is a significant thing that is taking place. It was important that the President take the nation to confidence about what are some of the positions that the country take. It's very pleasing to see what the country's position is in relation to the expansion of BRICS, core membership of BRICS, and the country's position on the Ukraine issue and many other issues. It's important that this statement is made so that we can then go on to debate on the basis of knowing what the position is, and then when we can take different positions on what is being said. But certainly it's a significant meeting taking place. Not just 5 countries, a host of many other countries that are attending the outreach linked to this meeting, a significant meeting.
Mr. Zondi, the President also touched on the importance of BRICS' role when it comes to shaping global dynamics. Let's just talk about those conversations that need to be had and what that conversations may look like.
Yeah, the most significant one is what should countries that are now emerging in a world that is now changing, how should they respond to all these changes taking place? And the changes are affecting almost every part of the world. We saw it with the global financial crisis of 2009, saw it again with how the world was responding to the COVID-19 epidemic. But we had actually seen it in other long-standing issues, the development agenda in the World Trade negotiation, the South agenda, in the negotiations on climate change, the South agenda in relation to sustainable development goals and how they're being implemented. All of those things are important, and the BRICS is best poised to develop some form of consensus for these many countries, numbering over 150 of them, that are considered developing or emerging, to know exactly what they want to do. It's never always possible for all 150 of them to sit down and talk. There's usually a few countries that gather in some form and represent all these views and then take them to the bigger group, and the BRICS is best poised to make definitive statements about how we're going to manage all these new dynamics that are emerging. New dynamics are emerging because of this, further new dynamics are emerging because of this war in Ukraine, and the whole world needs to think about what happens when this war ends and how do we redefine relations, because a lot is going to change. But the countries that are developing need to be ready to have clear positions, clear plans about how they want the world to be managed after that, because whatever happens will affect them. We are affected by how the world is managed.
The President also did confirm that the Chinese President will be in attendance. He did touch on the strategic relationship South Africa has with China, and did mention that a number of agreements are looking to be signed. Do we have any insights to what those possible agreements could be?
We know that there need to be many agreements relating to economy. For example, agreements relating to financial regulations, agreements relating to payment system, what payment system is BRICS going to put forward. A number of BRICS countries already have their own payments. The Indians, for example, and the Chinese and the Russians have their own payment system, so that you don't depend on the American payment system. Should you disagree with the United States, it can use that against you. But also the world does need a diversity of possibilities, and competition is good in a capitalist system and a democratic system as well, with of course a variety. We know that also be agreements that need to be made in relation to either the specifics about the alternative currencies or the route to alternative currencies decisions of some form. They need to be, we know that there are discussions in relation to vaccine research in the health sector. We know that discussions in relation to strengthening cooperation among higher education institutions, universities across the BRICS countries. We know that there have been discussions also in the area of agriculture and land. The ministers of agriculture and land have very specific things that need to be done. So there's a whole lot of discussion and a whole lot of issues. I numbered over 20 of the possible areas where agreements are being worked on, and the summit is where they all get tabled for signature or for adoption.
Speaking about currency, the President also touched on the new development bank and mentioned funding that was garnered in the billions for infrastructure projects. Do we have details as to what these infrastructure projects entail and where that money has been allocated to?
And this is an incremental and an expected step. From the beginning, since it was established, the new development bank has been getting new capital and expanding its portfolio of interventions. Almost all that it funds are in the infrastructure area, because the idea is to create conditions for economic growth and industrialization in countries where it invests. And they tend to be, the bulk of them are in the area of energy. There may be public transport, especially speed train, this new technologically driven train system. It's in the area of technology and development, science and research, and all of the infrastructure required to them, including the data infrastructure, cell phone infrastructure, 5G infrastructure, and stuff of that nature. So we expect that the bulk of that infrastructure funding will be in those areas, but we don't fully know which countries will benefit from it. I know South Africa has benefited from it. ESCOM got funding from the new development bank. I don't know what South Africa has applied for new funding, but we know that the whole host of other countries that are busy looking for these alternative and very attractive funding, because it focuses on what enables countries to graduate from dependence to independence, as opposed to the loans we've been getting from these international finance institutions that actually lock you into a cycle of dependence and are constantly managing an external debt that it will never come out of.
Mr. Zondi, the President also touched on the importance of fostering peace on the African continent. He mentioned Mozambique and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Just talk to us about the importance of this conversation.
And the BRICS countries always coordinate their position in relation to Africa's peace agenda, and it's been South Africa's aim. It's been South Africa's aim that you get first the BRICS to agree that there is a particular approach to conflict that we should adopt, and that approach is the one where you mediate for peace, and then you protect the peace through peacekeeping, and then you work on reconstruction of the country so that it doesn't return to conflict later on. That is just one approach to peace, and that is what South Africa has been promoting in BRICS, and the BRICS countries generally accept this. It's important because that it influences how the United Nations deal with these conflicts hotspot in a situation where there are competing views. The competing views include those who believe that we can end a war by sending a war machinery into those countries, by militarizing, looking for military solutions to weapon-based conflict. which usually fuels the conflict, complicate the outcomes, creates new cycles of conflict and stuff like that. We hope that the BRICS will put more diplomacy behind this, to support UN efforts to bring about peace, especially in the Congo and the whole of the Great Lakes, in Mozambique, but we also now have seen conflict flaring up in Sudan and Chad, and also in West Africa along the Mano River. The BRICS have got to work with South Africa and others, and the AU and the UN, to make sure that we end those conflicts, because peace is a precondition for development.
Definitely. Mr. Zondi, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insights and helping us to unpack the President's address tonight. That was Mr. Siphamandla Zondi, an international relations expert, just unpacking President Cyril Ramaphosa's address just a short while ago as we prepare for the BRICS Summit.